Welcome to the Drive a Car in Uruguay podcast.
Great to be here.
Today, we're taking a real deep dive into what you need to know about driving in Uruguay.
Yeah, we've gone through quite a bit of material, haven't we?
We have. We've looked at a pretty detailed briefing doc covering, well, everything from getting your vehicle registered to, understanding the local driving rules.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal really is to give you the essential info kind of quickly and hopefully entertainingly.
Especially if you're thinking about maybe getting behind the wheel there or even, moving to Uruguay.
Exactly.
And what's interesting, I think, about the sources we looked at is how comprehensive they are together.
Yeah.
Well, we have one that really digs into the nitty-gritty of vehicle registration.
Okay.
Another one that outlines what you need to actually drive legally.
Right. The license and rules stuff.
Exactly. And then a third one that takes a pretty candid look at, well, the realities of the driving culture there, why rules sometimes get ignored.
Ah, okay, that sounds intriguing. Let's jump right in then, starting with getting your car legal.
Makes sense.
So our first source, it's called How to Register a Car in Uruguay, Real Estate Uruguay. And, well, it doesn't really sugarcoat it. It says it's a process. It demands attention.
It's definitely not a walk in the park based on this.
No. And if you're thinking, oh, I'll just bring my own car, maybe the one you love from back home.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. There's some key hurdles right at the start.
Absolutely. The very first thing, and it's critical, is getting that import approval from Uruguayan customs.
Okay, import approval.
Yeah. Think of it like the gatekeeper. Without that approval, you're kind of stuck.
Right.
And the source really highlights this isn't just like filling out a form. Your vehicle actually has to meet Uruguay's safety and emissions standards.
Ah, so it could mean inspections, maybe even modifications.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Inspections for sure, and maybe some tweaks to make it compliant. It really underlines, the need to plan ahead. Don't just show up with your car.
Gotcha. And okay, assuming you get past that initial check, what about the actual customs clearance? The paperwork.
Oh, the paperwork. Yeah, get ready for that. The source lists quite a bit. You're talking bill of lading,
Okay.
your original vehicle title, obviously, the purchase invoice,
Huh?
customs declarations, specific import forms, and then, crucially, proof you've paid the duties and taxes.
Wow, that sounds like a stack. It sounds like meticulous is the word here. Every single paper has to be right.
That's exactly the impression I got. It emphasizes this sort of meticulous attention to detail. Imagine getting everything shipped and then one form is wrong.
Oh, nightmare. Delays, headaches.
Exactly. So getting those documents perfect from the start seems absolutely vital.
Okay, let's talk money then, because duties and taxes usually means cost.
It does. And importing a car? Yeah, it's not cheap. The source breaks down some significant costs.
Like what?
Well, there's an import duty. It's 20% of the vehicle's CIF value.
CIF, cost, insurance, and freight.
That's the one. Then you've got VAT, value-added tax, at 22% on top of that CIF value.
Okay, so that's already 42%.
Pretty much, yeah. Plus a consular duty, specifically 5% for automobiles.
Another 5%.
And a customs services duty, which is smaller, 0.2%, but it's capped at $50.
Still, it all adds up. That's a hefty chunk of the car's value.
It really is. However, the source does mention something important. Potential duty exemptions.
Oh.
Yeah, especially if your vehicle is coming from a Mercosur country, one of the neighboring South American trade bloc members.
Ah, right. So investigating that could potentially save you quite a bit.
Definitely worth looking into. It could make a real difference to that final bill.
Okay, so you've survived customs, paid the fees, your car is officially in Uruguay. What's next? The local registration.
Exactly. Now you start the process within Uruguay itself. And guess what? More attention to detail needed.
Of course. What kind of documents now?
Well, you need proof of ownership again. So things like the title, maybe the previous registration, bill of sale, and something called a certificate of conformity.
Certificate of conformity, confirming it meets standards.
Presumably, yeah. And these docs often need careful preparation, maybe translation, maybe legalization, depending on where they're from.
Okay.
Plus, you might face more inspections locally and potentially more adaptations to make sure it fully meets Uruguayan standards, not just the import ones.
Right, so it's like another layer of checks.
Kind of. And after any adjustments, you need certifications proving you've made them and they meet the standard.
Okay.
Then you finally submit all that paperwork, including those crucial customs clearance documents we talked about earlier for the actual registration itself.
And I assume there are fees for this part too.
Oh, yes. Registration fees. These seem to cover those import duties, the VAT, the customs processing fees again. It bundles some of it. And the total can vary, based on the type of vehicle, its weight, things like that.
It really sounds like each step depends heavily on the one before it.
Absolutely. You can't really skip ahead. The customs clearance is vital for the local registration. The documents just keep flowing through the process. Being organized seems paramount.
And is that it? Once you have the registration, you're done?
Not quite. It's not just a one-time thing. The source talks about ongoing compliance.
Okay. Like what?
Regular inspections, mandatory ones, to make sure your car continues to meet safety and emissions rules over time.
Right, like an annual checkup.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
And keeping up with tax payments. Those import duties, VAT, customs fees, some might be ongoing or need annual renewal. Careful tax planning is advised.
Okay.
And then the final step is getting those Uruguayan license plates. That's the visual proof you're all set.
Okay. So the big takeaway for importing a car seems to be brace yourself.
Haha, yeah, that summed it up.
Be prepared for potentially a long, kind of complicated process and significant costs.
Definitely. Thorough documentation, understanding the rules inside out, that's key. Patience probably helps too.
I bet. Okay, let's switch gears then. What if you decide not to import, maybe buy locally or just rent? What do you need to know just to drive in Uruguay? Our second source covers this, right?
Yes, it does. And the absolute baseline, non-negotiable thing is you need a valid driver's license.
Okay, makes sense. To rent or drive any car.
Any car, exactly. The minimum driving age is 18, and licenses, once you get a Uruguayan one, are typically valid for quite a while, 10 years.
That's pretty good.
It is. But renewals aren't automatic. They require a medical certificate. You need to prove you're still fit to drive.
Okay. Health checks. What about the rules of the road? Any specifics jump out?
Safety seems to be a big emphasis in the regulations themselves. Strict observance is expected.
Like,
Well, the basics. Seatbelts for everyone in the car. Proper child car seats. And they specify UN standards for those.
good to know for families.
Definitely. And sticking to speed limits, obviously. Distracted driving, like using your mobile phone, strictly prohibited.
Standard stuff, but good reinforcement. Anything unique?
Yes, here's an important one. Headlights must be on at all times on highways and intercity roads.
All times, even bright daylight.
Yep. The source is clear on that. It's a key safety measure for visibility. Might be different from what some drivers are used to.
Yeah, definitely something to remember. What else on rules? Speed limits, right away.
Understanding the specific road rules is vital, yeah. Speed limits vary, could be 45 kilometers per hour in some urban zones, up to maybe 75. Then on highways, typically 90 to 110 kilometer.
Okay, quite a range.
And you need to know the right-of-way rules, make sure your car has the required safety equipment, warning triangle, first aid kit, that sort of thing.
Right, and you mentioned medicals for renewals. Are there checks for getting a license too?
Oh, yes. For obtaining or renewing, there are medical and administrative requirements. Mandatory medical exams, vision tests. They assess your psychophysical aptitude at authorized clinics.
Psychophysical aptitude sounds thorough.
It does. And even if you're using a valid foreign license, you might need a medical certificate from one of these places to validate it for use in Uruguay, especially long term.
Okay, so if someone does want to get a proper Uruguayan license, say they're moving there, what's involved?
You'll need a valid Uruguayan national ID card first.
Right.
If you're a foreigner, you need proof of legal residence. And you can't have any outstanding debts, like unpaid traffic fines.
Right, clear your slate first.
Exactly. Then the process involves passing that medical exam we talked about, plus a written theory test and a practical driving test.
Standard test then. What about an international driving permit, an IDP? Is that useful?
It can be, yeah. The source mentions it. An IDP is basically just a translation of your existing national license into multiple languages. It's usually valid for a year.
So good for tourists or short-term stays?
Exactly. It can bridge the gap before you get a local license or for shorter visits. But for long-term living and driving, you'll likely need to go through the process for the Uruguayan license eventually.
Makes sense. How strictly are these rules enforced? You mentioned fines earlier.
The source suggests traffic laws are strictly enforced, particularly around key safety areas.
High speed.
Definitely speed. Also, seatbelt and child seat use. Helmet use for motorcyclists is another big one. Violations can lead to significant fines.
Okay.
And here's a really crucial point. There's a zero tolerance policy for alcohol while driving.
Zero tolerance, not just a low limit.
Zero. That's what the source indicates. No alcohol allowed if you're driving.
Wow, okay. That's very strict and important to know.
Absolutely. And they do control speeds strictly, both in urban areas, that 45 to 75 kilometer rangers, and on highways, 90 to 110 kilometer.
And registration and insurance, mandatory.
Oh, totally mandatory. You need that vehicle registration, proof of ownership, the certificate of conformity we mentioned for imported cars, and valid insurance, including liability coverage. Gotta have the paperwork in the car.
Okay, so lots of rules, strict enforcement on paper. But the source also mentions some slightly alarming road safety statistics.
Yeah, it does advise caution. Be mindful of road conditions, which can vary quite a bit from smooth highways to maybe rougher secondary roads. And it hints at being prepared for potentially, let's say, less predictable driving from others sometimes. Reckless driving is mentioned.
Okay, so defensive driving is probably a good idea.
Always a good idea anywhere, but maybe especially so here, based on the context.
Any other considerations? Age limits. Costs for the license itself.
Yep, age limits. Minimum 18 to get a license, as we said. But often, car rental companies have their own higher minimum age, typically 23.
Oh, important for travelers.
Very. And there can be surcharges for younger drivers, sometimes even older drivers when renting.
Okay, and the license cost.
Getting the license itself involves fees for the exams, the medical check, the issuance. The source estimates the total around, say, 100 to 150 US dollars. So there's an investment of time, paperwork, and money involved.
Right. It all adds up. Preparation is key, clearly. Okay, this is super useful information. Before we dig into that third source about driving culture, just a quick reminder. If you are thinking about making Uruguay your home and need to explore property options, definitely check out realestate-uruguay.com.
Good point. They've got a wide selection worth browsing if you're considering a move.
All right, so that third source. Why are drivers in Uruguay ignorant of traffic rules? Real Estate Uruguay. That title alone is something.
It is rather direct, isn't it? It tackles this more concerning aspect we've kind of touched on, the idea that traffic rules aren't always followed.
Yeah, and the source apparently links this directly to a high number of accidents and fatalities.
It does. It presents it as a significant problem contributing to road safety issues.
So why? What reasons does the source give for this? Perceived ignorance or disregard?
It suggests several contributing factors, painting a kind of complex picture. It's not just one thing.
Okay, like what?
One key factor mentioned is a potential lack of really comprehensive driver education. Maybe the training isn't deep enough or doesn't cover all situations well.
Okay. Education gaps.
Then there's inconsistent law enforcement. If people feel they can get away with bending the rules sometimes.
They're more likely to do it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Poor road conditions are also mentioned. Sometimes the state of the road itself might make it difficult or tempting to ignore certain rules.
Like swerving to avoid potholes or something.
Could be, or maybe unclear markings. Plus, the source points to a kind of cultural aspect, a potential culture of complacency among some drivers.
Complacency. Like just assuming things will be okay.
Sort of, yeah. And maybe insufficient public awareness campaigns about the importance of specific traffic rules.
So it's a mix of education, enforcement, infrastructure, and maybe even attitude.
That seems to be the argument, yes. These factors work together, or rather, against road safety.
And the consequences are stark, right? Accidents, injuries.
Definitely. The source emphasizes that ignoring traffic laws leads directly to accidents and injuries. It talks about things like ingrained road habits, overall safety consciousness or lack thereof, and the prevalence of driver errors.
Errors like?
Distracted driving comes up again, specifically mobile phone use. That's highlighted as a major ongoing concern.
Still a problem everywhere, it seems.
It really is. Also, low seatbelt use is mentioned again, and just a general lack of safety awareness among all road users, maybe pedestrians included. And it backs this up with some numbers. It cites a statistic, 43,000 non-fatal injuries back in 2004. While that's an older stat, it underscores the potential scale of the problem historically.
Yeah, it's a big number.
Yeah.
It really drives home the seriousness.
It does. It shows the real-world impact when rules aren't followed consistently.
So what's the proposed solution, according to this source? Just more tickets?
Not just that, it really emphasizes education as being crucial for changing the driving culture long-term, addressing those educational gaps, improving training.
Okay, building a better foundation.
Exactly. But alongside that, Yes, effective and consistent enforcement of traffic rules is seen as essential, with transparent penalties so people understand the consequences and see that rules are applied fairly.
Accountability.
Right. The source also mentions national road safety strategies that are trying to tackle this through a combination of better education, infrastructure planning, and collaboration between different groups.
Like government, police, driving schools.
Presumably, yeah. And it even highlights community involvement as being vital, getting everyone invested in improving road safety.
Makes sense. Grassroots efforts, too.
And it circles back to strict enforcement on key issues: speed, seatbelts, and definitely that zero tolerance alcohol rule. Plus, prioritizing pedestrian rights and safety.
So it's really advocating for a multi-pronged approach.
Very much so. Education, enforcement, infrastructure, community awareness, tackling it from all angles.
Ultimately, then, this source suggests the reasons for ignoring rules are complex. That culture of complacency, patchy enforcement, maybe bad roads.
And even it mentions unwritten rules that some drivers might follow instead of the official ones.
Ah, interesting. Local understandings that might not match the law books.
Could be. And again, that persistent mobile phone use while driving is flagged as a really significant contributing factor.
It provides a lot of context for that earlier advice about driving cautiously.
It certainly does. It suggests that while you need to know and follow the official rules, you also need to be aware that not everyone else might be doing the same for various complex reasons.
Okay, so let's try and bring all this together. Driving in Uruguay, it sounds like a real mix.
It does. You've got opportunities, beautiful country to see, I imagine, but also challenges.
Right. Registering a vehicle, especially importing one, seems like a major undertaking. Needs patience, meticulous prep, and budget.
Absolutely. It's doable, but requires serious commitment.
Then once you're actually driving, you need that valid license. You need to know the rules, seatbelts, speed limits, headlights on highways, zero alcohol.
The regulations are clear on those points.
But you also need to be aware that enforcement might be inconsistent sometimes. Road conditions can vary, and the local driving culture might mean you encounter unexpected behavior.
Exactly. So, adhering to the rules yourself is crucial, but so is maintaining a high level of awareness and prioritizing safety defensively.
It sounds like this deep dive has given us a pretty solid overview, covering the practicalities of registration and licensing, but also some of the underlying cultural and safety issues.
I think so. Hopefully, listeners have a good sense of what to expect, the things to prepare for, and maybe what questions they need to ask themselves if they're considering driving there.
Yeah, what stands out to you the most? Is it the complexity of import, the strict rules, or the cultural aspect? Something to think about.
It's definitely food for thought.
And for those of you who are seriously considering making Uruguay home and maybe putting this driving knowledge to good use, one last reminder to check out the real estate options over at realestate-uruguay.com.
Worth a look if you're making plans.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of driving in Uruguay.
Yeah.
We hope it's been informative and sparked some thinking.
Yeah, hope it was helpful.
Thank you for listening to the Drive a Car in Uruguay podcast.